Jen, do you know if Pam's having technical difficulties? Oh, here we
You're
go.
ready to, it's time to go if you're
Okay.
ready.
All right. We'll start the work session on free eDNA, and then we will be moving into executive session. As chair of the House Executive Department's Administration Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a full committee work session on bills referred to the Executive Department's Administration Committee. It will be followed by an executive session. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by clicking on the following website address: https://zoom.us/j/955-295-79162, or dialing one of the following phone numbers: 1-301-715-8592 or 1-929-205-6099. B, by providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, we previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. This information is printed in the House calendar. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-271-3600 or email at hcs@leg.state.nh.us. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. I want to introduce the staff that are on the meeting assisting us. Pam Smiling is the meeting host. Additional staff providing support are Jen Four and Joel Anderson. This is a work session on bills referred to the eDNA Committee for interim study, and executive session will follow. Copies of the interim study bills have been posted on the main page of the General Court website under the heading Remote Meetings. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. And Representative Sytek, if you want to call the roll.
Representative Schuett.
People have to unmute. Half the committee is
They
not
will, Peter,
muted.
when it gets to them.
I am
Representative.
present. Sorry, John, I am present at home and alone.
Okay. Representative Judy. Representative Schmidt.
I am home alone.
Home alone. Representative Schultz.
Present. My husband will be in and out of the room, as are my pets.
Representative Fontenot. Going twice. Representative Fontenot. Representative Desjardins.
Present and in my den alone.
Representative Fellows.
Present, alone.
Representative Fox.
Present, and I am at my house alone.
Representative Grota.
Present at home, alone in my office, but my husband is home.
Representative Merchant.
Present at home. My wife and daughter may be in and out.
Representative Pimentel. One more time, Representative Pimentel.
He is
Well,
not.
be that way. Representative McGuire.
Home, currently alone. Is in the house.
The clerk is alone and is here somewhere. Representative Bowden. Is Representative Bowden again? No. Representative Prue. Representative Prue is not here. Representative Panacity.
I am here. I'm here. And I'm alone, unfortunately.
If you say so. Representative Pearson.
I'm in my home in East Derry, and despite my background, and my wife is present in the house, not feeling well.
Representative Yakubovich.
Present at the house alone.
And Representative Burt.
Representative Melvin is filling in for Representative Burt, I believe.
Representative Melvin.
Here, home alone.
And,
Okay.
and Representative O'Brien is here for Representative Pimentel.
Oh, O'Brien for Pimentel. Let me just. And would you repeat, please? I'm sorry. Yes, Representative O'Brien is home alone. May I ask, please, to repeat who is in for Representative Burt?
Representative Melvin.
M-E-L-V-I-N.
Say that. Spell that again, please.
M-E-L-V-I-N.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm sorry. I got it. Thank you. And the chair is present. Where is he?
The chair is present, home and alone.
"16 members are present."
Okay, with 16 members present, we will begin. Pam, could someone just reach out to Representative Fontenot? He said he was going to be on. I just want to make sure he's not having trouble.
Sure, sure.
All right. As you all know, due to the COVID-19 and the circumstances, there was limited abilities to meet on these interim study bills. It's our job today when we go into executive session to determine whether they are needed to go forward with future legislation or not recommended for future legislation on the bills. So just to move forward, before we exec them, we can go through each bill individually briefly and go from there into executive session and vote on these. On interim study bills, for those of you who are not familiar, when we do exec them for recommended for future legislation or not recommended for future legislation, there will be a committee report made from the committee on what we determined. From there are no minority reports. We do not vote on them as a full house. They are just printed in the calendar on the recommendations of the committee on each of these bills. Does anyone have any questions on the process first?
Representative Schmidt has his hand up.
Representative Schmidt.
Just to clarify, Representative Fontenot sent us a message saying that he is detained by a property management issue and will not be with us today.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, that answers that.
No. And Mr. Chairman, can I just remind members that their raise hand button is at the bottom of the participant panel, or if they're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand. Just just for a quick refresh.
Right. So we can start, we'll start with House Bill 1367. And open that up for discussion amongst the committees on this. I know when we talked, there was a number of areas that needed work, and that was the reason why we did interim study, to look forward and see if there was any work that could be done on this going forward, or if we felt it was needed. Anybody want to start the discussion? Representative McGuire?
Yes, thank you. I looked into this. I asked Ms. Smarling to get some data, and it appears that in many cases we don't have an issue, but there are a number of professions where we license them and other states don't. And one thing that I think is that this does need future legislation, but a more focused bill would be much more appropriate. That we look at each profession, any profession that we think has an issue, and decide what to do about it. These broad bills that say just take an outside license are very awkward to deal with.
And if I remember looking at the document that Pam did for us, there wasn't a lot of states, I mean, a lot of licensing that we were the only state, or one of the handful of states. There was not that many, correct?
Yeah. Yes, there were 3 on her list, and all three of those professions have requirements such that it'll be easy for somebody from out of state to do the same thing as somebody from in-state. Like a weighmaster, they have to take a test every time they get a new license. So, you move to the state, you take the same test everybody else does, and then apply for the license. But Pam only looked at the non-medical professions. So that's of concern, particularly as we're adding new requirements. For example, medical imaging technicians are not licensed in any of the adjacent states, but there are, they do have them, and that's one that I think we particularly ought to look at, what the reciprocity requirement should be.
So would we need this legislation going forward, or are we looking at something different? Because we're just looking at certain ones. This does everything.
Yes.
I mean, would we, instead of recommending future legislation, do we want to, I'm not sure how we want to word it. It's not recommended for this one, but we should look at those ones that are similar.
Yes, the bill raises important issues and legislation is needed to address them, but this bill itself, I can't see being the way to go.
Okay.
I'm glad to write a blurb that says so.
Further discussion from the committee on this?
Representative had her hand up first.
Who was it, Pam?
Yeah, I was just.
Representative Schuett.
Okay, Representative Schuett.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to point out basically what you just said, Jeff. And I will further point out that whether we recommend or not, the statement that we put out can say basically what Carol just suggested. To me, it seems more proper to say not recommended on this particular bill, but as long as you're pointing out that perhaps legislation specifying certain professions is pointed out in the statement, I think that's going to accomplish what Representative McGuire is talking about.
Who else do we have, Pam?
Representative Schmidt has his hand up.
Representative Schmidt.
You need to, there you go.
Okay, there I'm good. So I agree with Representative McGuire that this is not the right bill, but the issue does remain. So I'm in agreement with her proposal and Representative Stewart's position as well.
Q.
And Representative Sitek, I see.
Representative Sitek.
Yeah, we're dancing around a particular issue or question, and that's when you say, when we recommend for future legislation, we aren't necessarily saying this bill, but rather this subject matter. And I think that the subject matter needs to go forward, if not this bill. So I think we basically agree, but I want to be, am I clear? My focused question, recommended for further legislation, does that mean area or this specific bill?
Pam, I think it all comes out, and you correct me if I'm wrong, in the general wording when we put it forward. Is that not true? It's not, doesn't always have to be the particular bill itself, but it can be the subject matter. It's all in the wording of the blurb or committee report.
That's correct. That, you really could, pick either option, and as long as you're clear in your statement exactly what you're supporting, whether then that's really the final explanation of what you're doing.
Okay.
It's up to you how you want to, how defined you want to, speak about the particular language of this bill. If you want to think of it as the particular language, then that would be very narrow, but it's generally considered a concept in the bill, and whether you are supportive of further work in a new session.
Okay. Yeah, this is reflective of the committee today, and we cannot bind any future legislature to our decision. So, I mean, this is just a vote of the committee and their position. Any other discussion on 1367? Seeing none, we will move over to House Bill 1485. We did have a subcommittee on this. Representative Prue chaired it. He is not here today. Representative Panacity, I think you were also on there.
I was.
You want to give us a little insight on this?
Yeah, if I can remember correctly, I did have several committee meetings regarding it, and we were all in favor of the concept of surveillance cameras, but there was issues with placements and privacy issues. We thought, and I want to, I don't know if this is, Pam, do you remember if there was an amendment to this? Did Mark draft an amendment to this thing? I can't remember.
If he did, he didn't put it in the file. There was an amendment from prior to your hearing, but not, no other amendment that came in after the subcommittee worked on it. So,
well, I know that we both kind of agreed that it was a good thing. We listened to some individuals who came in that were all for this thing, because I think one of the individuals, somebody got roughed up pretty badly, and they thought having cameras would be the answer. But then there became the privacy issue, because the cameras can only be in certain areas and not be in certain areas. So we thought, I believe we agreed that it would probably be best to go forward and continue discussing. We thought it was a good idea, but thought there were issues. So
Representative Panacity, wasn't there an issue as to cost as well? Those are the two prime.
Yeah, well, there was an issue of cost, but we didn't have anybody that came in and said specifically how much it would cost to put in recording systems or any of that. It was all kind of assumptions of it would be an expense, even a small expense. Some of these halfway homes or homes couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford any expense, whether it was hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. They didn't think it was they could afford that. So that was kind of coming from the home side. But they also said it would be a pretty good idea to have them. But they didn't know how it was going to be paid for. That's why we thought maybe we should have further discussion.
Okay. I also agree with that. I think it's worth moving forward on this. But obviously the privacy issues need to be addressed as well as the cost issues. But I think, this isn't a bad piece of legislation. Yeah. Further discussion?
I see Representative Schultz has her hand up next.
Representative Schultz.
I was just trying to lower it, but
Oh.
I guess it bears mentioning that I was going to say exactly what Representative Panacity said. Write that down, America. See, we can agree.
I knew I liked you for some reason, Chris.
So then Representative Schmidt has his hand up.
Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I second the remarks that have been offered thus far. I think it just needs to be factored into our discussion that the pandemic has wreaked additional hardship, imposed additional burdens on the affected community here. So that's something we have to make sure that that is considered in the legislation, but I support the position in support of the bill that's been offered by a number of colleagues.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what your feeling is about attendees participating, but there is a hand up among the attendees, Sarah Aiken from Community Bridges.
Sure.
All right. You should be able to. There you go.
Hi, thank you very much, Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sarah Aiken, and I represent Community Bridges. We're one of 10 area agencies that serve people with developmental disabilities and acquired brain disorders in New Hampshire. I wanted to let you know we have been working on this issue with the Department of Health and Human Services for some time, and I believe the issue has been resolved in that there is a process in place now. It is in rule that allows for surveillance cameras to be used at the request of the individual, the parent, or the guardian. There is a process for it, and I'm happy to send you the rule if you're interested. But I believe that this has been solved. Like I said, it is in HEM 309, and it does allow for this if necessary. So it allows for it, but it does not place the financial burden, and it does not put, as many of you remember during our previous discussion, we talked about how there is a federal settings rule that this bill as written would put all of the wait list funds for people with disabilities in jeopardy. So that was our very significant concern. So at the request of the subcommittee, we did go back and work with the department, and there is a process now in place. So I just wanted to inform you of that. Please be cognizant. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars at risk from the federal government, and there is now a process in place. With that, I will end my comment, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for that information. And just for those folks that are out there, so they know that, as we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, that this does not pass the legislation. This does not guarantee it's going forward. That's all it is a recommendation from this committee as to whether or not future legislation should be brought forward in the subject matter, not this particular piece. So while there is something in rules, it does not stop us from going forward with the concept and addressing the issues we've discussed here today, dealing with cost and privacy as well. But thank you for letting us know so that we can look that up, and if you could get that to us, we would appreciate it.
The host will be informed that you would like to speak.
Anyone else, Pam?
Representative Sytek has his hand up.
Representative Sytek.
Yeah, before Representative Schmidt or McGuire say this, can this be done by rule without legislation?
Representative McGuire?
I don't see why not. That won't stop. I mean, the question is, if a house wants to install cameras for their staff security or whatever, they can do that and the rules would establish what the criteria are or what the limitations would be. If they want to start, if you want to have cameras all over the place in every house that doesn't particularly want it, then you'd have to have a law.
If I may continue, wasn't the point of the legislation that these would be required everywhere? What's the point if there is an issue of abuse in a particular house that doesn't have a camera? What good's the law? What's good? What good are the rules if it doesn't sweep them all?
Representative Schmidt, would you like to comment?
Well, it is a bit of a conundrum. I agree with what Representative McGuire said, but of course, one of the primary criteria and one of the primary motivating issues was the question of abuse of residents of these homes. Obviously, to the degree that an individual family wants to have their loved ones room surveilled, that's probably true. But I think one of the thrusts is to be able to protect inmates, residents, and so forth. And so I think that you would require a law to provide that foundation. And so I don't think you could get at that by rules.
Representative Grota?
Thank you. I think that recommending this, although it's great to know that there are things that are happening in the right direction, there are those people who can't speak for themselves and who don't have advocates. And I think that it's important to consider them. And I think that recommending this for, yes, is just saying that this committee agrees that this is a good thing and it is worth something. It is valuable. So I do think that still we should consider continuing with this principle.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Representative Merchant has his hand up.
Representative Merchant.
If I could, Mr. Chair, go back to the original question about rules versus the law. Rules really have the full force of the law behind it. It's just a question where it emanates from the legislative body versus the executive branch through rulemaking granted to the executive branch from legislative branch. So in essence, if the department decides to make a rule to make the same requirement, that would have the same impact as the law requiring it itself. So to be clear with everyone, this could, in my opinion, be done through rulemaking as long as the rule says the same thing the law would have said, in essence.
Then Schmidt and McGuire. Oh.
Representative Schmidt first.
So with respect, I disagree to the degree. Of course, Representative Merchant is correct that the rules do have the force and effect of law, but they have to be based on rules are there to implement statutes. They are not there to deal with situations in which the statutes are silent. So to the degree that we wish to impose this requirement, we'd have to have a statute to underpin it. But I would like to just reference the remarks of Ms. Aiken earlier with regard to the jeopardizing of federal funding. We would have to have more information. Of course, any statute that would be, any bill that would come forward would have to go through that entire process. So, but we have to earmark the whole situation, as I would say, with regard to the potential jeopardizing of that funding stream.
Representative McGuire.
Actually, Peter said it just fine. I agree with them.
Thank you. Any other hands, Pam?
No other hands.
All right. We will move on to House Bill. Oh, come on.
Representative Saitek has just raised his hand.
Representative Saitek.
Very quick, how does Sarah Aiken spell her name?
SARAHAIKEN.
No S.
Yes,
Sarah Aiken.
S in the beginning.
Yeah, all right, terrific, thanks. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to House Bill 1528. Establishing committee to study salaries of classified and unclassified state employees and directing the Department of Administrative Services to issue a request for proposal to conduct a study. We'll start first by saying we all received some research that Pam did on this and where they are at this point with their study and funds and going forward. Hopefully everyone received that.
That went out, that did not actually go out with the bills and minutes, but I sent it out when I sent the initial notice about the Zoom meeting and the agenda and the list of the 4 interim study bills. So that went out on September 10th.
And Pam, do you just want to go over briefly where they're at with that in your review?
Sure.
For everybody, for those who don't have it in front of them?
I had asked the question in August to get an update on what had happened with the RFP that the Department of Administrative Services had put out. And Deputy Commissioner Keene got back to me, and she said that on March 11th of this year, the governor and council approved a contract for Siegel to perform a 2-part compensation study. And they were two areas of the state employee sort of compensation world that had been included in a chapter law, in House Bill 4, actually, from 2019. And one was a reallocation review of all the trooper positions. And the second part was a comprehensive review of the state's personnel system, which is what this bill more or less contemplates. And so that contract was signed in March, and the first part was completed, but not the second part because of COVID. And so it is that second part on the comprehensive review of the personnel system study is still there. It's still funded, but it's on hold right now. But the contract does have an end date of March 11th, 2022. So she felt that once people were back in a more traditional routine, that would happen. You know, they're poised to do the second part of that RFP.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Comments?
I see hands. I see Representative Pearson and Schuett.
Representative Pearson.
Yeah, the action that was just described that's funded by that already happened through the governor's office, does that in essence do the same thing that 1528 does, or is there additional things within this that are not covered under what was funded already?
Pam, if I could, I think I saw Representative Walls in attendance.
Oh, and I see a
You still
hand
here?
up. As luck would have it, she's got her hand up.
Excellent. Could you unmute her?
Sure.
Representative Walls, welcome.
Thank you. I did raise my hand because I can answer that. And the answer is that the study that they have sent the contract out on and what I intended in this bill are in fact the same thing. So like anybody, I'm disappointed the study is proceeding slowly. I thought that it might, among other things, even help with the current contract pending for the poor state employees who don't have a contract. But I think at this point, like everything else on COVID, we're just going to have to wait. So I think that the contract's been let, given how long it is before they have to complete the contract, that it's really another 18 months. At this point, I don't see a point in further legislation. I think if there's a problem with it, we can do legislation in the second year of the session. But I think for right now, probably I would, I'm not on the committee, but I would recommend the committee not pursue further legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Representative Schuett has a hand up.
Representative Schuett.
Actually going to sort of say the opposite as a co-sponsor on this bill, but I will follow the lead of my prime sponsor, Representative Walls, and agree that if she feels that it's not necessary to go forward now, that she or I are reelected, we could put a bill in the second half of the future biennium to cover this.
Thank you.
Representative Walls has her hand up again.
Representative Walls.
I just am interested in why Representative Schuett disagrees. What is it she knows that I don't know? So that's why I put my hand up.
Well, I will just point out to Representative Walls that the main reason that we put this bill into interim study was to sort of be sure to hold the Department of Administrative Services feet to the fire, if you will, to be sure that they are going to go forward with this. Currently, I understand the RFP that's been approved only covers a few hundred positions. And we want to be sure that they are in fact going to continue on and look at the whole spectrum.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
You are.
Okay.
If I could just say one thing first. I think the point being that even if we do this as not recommended for future legislation, the way we word it can clearly state what Representative Walls wants it, as she has suggested, that if it, while this is going forward, this legislation is not needed, but in a time certain in the next biennium, if it is not completed, we can move forward, that it would be recommended. And Representative Walls.
When I talked to the Department of Administrative Services, and they actually talked to them the day they put the RFP out, they told me at that point that it was going to encompass both all classified and unclassified employees. I have not seen the RFP or the contract to know, in fact, if that's what they did. But I think that any recommendation for the committee needs to be clear that that is the intent of what the committee, I'm assuming what the committee wants as well, judging by Representative Schuett's nods. And the original bill is it was to encompass all classified and unclassified employees. And unfortunately, I did not see, I was not on Pam's distribution list, so I'm not sure what she put out. But, you know, I think that that is worth following through on and making sure that the RFP is consistent with what they told me at the time that this was let out.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Any hands up?
I
Pam?
would just ask if Mr. Chair, if you want Pam to clarify the terms of the current RFP.
Pam?
What I included in the memo is exactly like verbatim what I was given by the assistant commissioner, or the deputy commissioner, I forget, deputy commissioner, and that was that Eagle would perform a wage and benefit study of 100 classified and unclassified positions. And I didn't push back and ask her how those positions were chosen or anything like that. So I don't know more than what's included there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is bringing up something from the depths of my memory, that they do not in fact look at all positions, but that they sample at all levels. And perhaps that's why they're talking about only 100 right now, is that they're doing sampling and then they will base their study on the sampling. As I think about this, I remember that discussion as well.
Okay, and I would assume if we did all positions, the cost would be exorbitant.
I suspect you're right.
Further discussion?
So I just ask, as prime sponsor, Representative Walls, you would be satisfied with those terms?
Well, if the sampling crosses the spectrum of all classified and unclassified employees, yes. I just, I'm assuming that what they told me is what they're doing and what's in the contract. I have no reason to doubt it. So assuming that's what they did with their sampling, I think it's just fine.
Okay, I would further add that I did reach out to Jay Ward, representative from SEA, testified on the bill, and he said that the SEA was satisfied with the RFP that was approved by governor and council, but obviously they haven't been able to follow where they're going with it at the exact moment. So I'm assuming that they will also follow through to be sure that it's going to meet these criteria.
And that can be in the report that we put forward, one way or the other, looking forward. Further discussion?
I see no hands.
Seeing none, we will move on to our final bill. House Bill 1536, and I will recognize Representative Merchant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill basically had three components to it. One was the issue of the pharmacist in charge and its legacy back to a period in time which was a lot of independent pharmacy owners. And when there were times the owner would own one or two pharmacies, was to have a pharmacist be appointed as the pharmacist in charge, take responsibility for the pharmacy and be accountable to the board. Since that time, corporate America, for the most part, owns most pharmacies today. And we have a disconnect between the authority and the accountability. So the intent of this bill in that arena was to try to correct that imbalance and have those who have the authority and control the resources more accountable to the board and to the state for their responsibilities. In going forward and talking with the Board of Pharmacy, at the time, they felt that the language, the way it was written, was probably problematic, and therefore it needed to be revised. So that was the first part of it. Number two, for those who are on the committee can remember back, there was a time in which the Board of Pharmacy has sort of I would say, a heavy hand in looking at the preparation of sterile products for administration outside of a hospital, predominantly within the physician's office space. And it caused a lot of stir, and it was changed, if you will. But what happened was the law still requires the board, because it says the board shall go into and inspect versus it may. So the intent of the bill was to clarify that, so the board would have the authority to go in based upon a complaint, which would be the may, and not be forced to go in when there's no reason not to go in, just because the law required them to do it. And the third prong to it was the issue about discipline in certain parts of the statute for the board. In some cases, the board can either slap you on the wrist or throw the hammer at you. And the intent here was to give more granularity, more certification in the ability for the board to align the discipline in concert to what the issue was. So those are the three things. In talking with the Board of Medicine and Board of Nursing about the issue of may versus shall, they were bringing back the issue of not having the board going at all, which I think is problematic. So we had a subcommittee. Representative McGuire was on the subcommittee with myself. Carol, I can't remember who the other person was, but we, at that point in time, recognized the wording in the bill, although the intent of it was probably fine, the wording in the bill itself had to be worked on and revised. So my recommendation is to look at this as future legislation. The concept makes sense, but the bill itself is problematic.
Further discussion?
Yeah, one of the issues is that whenever you talk about inspecting someone else's facilities that is not actually responsible to the pharmacy board, like a doctor's office, they get all huffy and say, you know, it's my office, it's my business. But in some cases, you do need a pharmacist or someone who's familiar with it, because there were many cases where drug storage was incorrect. But it's going to be a very difficult matter to word the law such that it doesn't get the entire medical society against.
Oh,
Carol,
you're
yeah.
muted. You're muted, Carol.
Yes, I had finished.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Schmidt has his hand up.
Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think, as someone who is both a regular consumer of medications, having reached the age of the gradual self-disassembly of all my physical faculties as well as mental. So I'm in pharmacies a lot, and having served on the JELCAR and this committee for the past 14 years, I have seen this evolution of the situation that Representative Merchant has very accurately described with regard to the dichotomy that we have now. I apologize for the ringing telephone, which I will ignore. But the thing is that the pharmacist in charge still has all the responsibility for everything being kosher in the pharmacy. The word kosher not being a religious term in this regard, but rather everything being in order in the pharmacy, and yet being a captive, if you will, of the corporate situation. The pharmacist has no authority to do a lot of the things that has been removed by the corporate structure. And this puts the pharmacist in charge in a really, many respects, untenable situation. And this particular aspect of it is just part of the circumstance. So I think that future legislation is warranted with regard to studying. Maybe we were not ready to implement anything yet, but I think we have to study this issue in order to know how to deal with it. So I do think that we're headed. We need to go in that direction.
Thank you. Anyone else, Pam?
No.
All right.
Just wanted you to know, Representative Sytek, that I muted you because I thought that was your phone ringing. Sorry.
You are unmuted.
All right. Seeing no further discussion in this work session, we will move into the executive session. Pam, do I need to do roll call again for executive session? Or are we good to go?
Or just for the votes, you just can
Okay.
move in without accepting, just declare it, and then you can go ahead and just have roll calls on the actual motion.
Okay. So we'll move into executive session and we will start with House Bill 1367. Representative McGuire.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we recommend it for further legislation, but in a more focused manner.
Representative McGuire moves future legislation. Do I have a second?
Second,
Who was that?
Representative Melvin.
Representative Melvin, seconds. Discussion.
I guess I'm a little confused. I thought in the early discussion, we had thought that we didn't need this. So why would we recommend it for, because there were issues with some positions. So did I misunderstand the whole crux of our conversation at the beginning? Carol.
Representative McGuire.
Yes, I think what we said is that this bill addresses all professions, but the issue that we regulate a large number of professions that not all states do, including our adjacent states. And therefore, we need to consider this. But the bill as written is too broad and not focused. But there are cases where we have a license requirement that someone who has been doing the same job in, say, Maine or Massachusetts, they don't have a license. And it would be very difficult for them to come to New Hampshire and get a license. Thank you, Chair.
And excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I've been reminded that substitutes cannot make motions or second. And so unfortunately.
That's right.
Then
Can't accept the second.
Do I have a second to Representative McGuire's motion?
I will second. Sytech seconds.
Sytech seconds. Okay, back to Representative McGuire. Anything else to further?
No, the reason we put this into interim study was that we agreed it was a serious concern and we could do something about it. But because of the shutdown and being unable to have meetings, we haven't done any of the work that we would have liked to. But the problem it points out is still valid. It's still our scope, essentially. And so it's going to need further legislation.
And I think, as we discussed earlier, that there are professions out there that where this would work, and this piece of legislation is just too broad, and it would be appropriate to have further legislation dealing with those subjects as necessary.
And Representative Schuett has her hand up.
Representative Schuett.
Thank you. I'm sort of rethinking what we had talked about originally on this. And I don't think that I want to have the committee give the impression that we are in fact endorsing this broad piece of legislation. Regardless, as we have said, regardless of what the recommendation is, the statement that goes along with it can make clear what the committee's intent is. Myself, I think I would rather see not recommended for this specific bill, but would prefer to see future legislation and then spell out exactly what Representative McGuire was saying. I think that would be preferable to this going forward as it is.
And I see Representative Grota has her actual hand up.
Representative Groda.
I do, thank you. So now I understand the vote to say is that if you don't recommend it, is that you don't recommend it in principle. If you recommend it, you're recommending the principle of it. We're not recommending or not recommending the bill. Is that right? Or do I have this wrong? We're not recommending the bill because if we were to recommend the bill, we wouldn't have put an interim study. So we're either recommending the principles of the bill or not recommending the principles of the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it all goes into the wording of the report as to the intent of the committee going forward with legislation and the intent of what needs to be in future legislation.
So if we were to recommend this, sorry, follow up?
No, I'm just, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, on this. I believe it's all in the intent of the wording of the report.
That's correct. That's correct. It's up to you how you want to view the vote. But really the statement that you make is going to, prevail and show exactly what your intent was.
Okay. Representative Groda.
Follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what we're saying if we recommend is that we see that there is a need to perhaps relax, I'm using that word very, very loosely, relax some of our previous legislation. This bill is not the vehicle to do that with, but perhaps in the future, we could entertain such a bill. Is that what we're saying?
Representative McGuire, that your intent?
Yes, my intent is that the bill as written is not suitable to be passed, but that the issue that the bill raises is important and does need further legislation. And I'd like to comment that if you look at the calendars from every other session, you'll see back-to-back recommendations for further legislation and against further legislation with almost the same wording. So I think that the actual recommendation is kind of undefined, and there's no clear understanding of what it means. It's only the words that really matter. So if you've got somebody that's willing to make the words that everybody seems to think ought to say, vote for the motion. If you want to write a different kind of words, then vote against.
And Representative Schmidt has his hand up.
Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as we all know, we can't, you said it in your opening remarks, legislature cannot bind a future legislature with regard to anything. And this bill is going to die at the end of the session, one way or the other. And so to the degree that we recognize that there is a situation that needs addressing, Representative McGuire would be completely within her rights, should she be reelected, to file such legislation, whether we recommend against it or for it. But I think to the degree that the committee recognizes that there is a problem with regard to certain professions that are not licensed in other states, but may be licensed here, that we ought to deal with that or try to deal with it, and accept at the same time that this particular bill is too broad, is not appropriate, and to the degree that our language reflects that, I'm prepared to vote for the motion, and I think that Representative McGuire will likely sponsor the legislation to do it the way she understands. And we will have a shot at it because it'll come back to this committee, whether we're here or not.
Well said, Representative Schmidt. Any other discussion? The motion is recommend for future legislation, noting that this is not the vehicle that we were looking for. It's too broad. That will be stated in the remarks. Noting that there is issues in certain professions that should be looked at and addressed. That motion by Representative McGuire, seconded by Representative Sytek. And Representative Sytek, you can call the roll.
Representative Schuett,
Okay, I will vote yes.
as noted. Representative Schmidt,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Desjardins.
Yes.
Desjardins. Representative Fellows,
Yes.
Representative Fox,
Yes.
Representative Grota,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative McGuire.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Panacity,
Yes.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Yakubovich,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
and the chair,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
The vote of 16-0, the motion of recommend for future legislation is adopted. And there is no consent calendar on these, so we don't have to ask that question.
That's right.
Notice I didn't.
All right, the next bill up is House Bill 1485. And the chair recognizes Representative Schultz for a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I, forgive me if I don't word this perfectly, but would recommend this bill be introduced for future, I don't know how you word the motion, but to support the bill for being presented again with certain changes, especially a concern over privacy, but the underlying concept of the bill is very good. It needs to be addressed. There are cases of actual abuse at these home care settings and or at these developmental disabilities facilities, and having cameras would be
Representative
a
Schultz,
way.
can I get a second before you go forward?
Oh, sorry.
Second. I'll second that.
Representative Schultz recommends future legislation, seconded by Representative Panacity. Now you may speak to your motion, Representative Schultz.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, that there are concerns about the sort of incidents that would be captured by these cameras that would hold folks accountable, so folks wouldn't be abused in these settings, to provide protection, to assist families in getting to the bottom of what some situations they've encountered with their loved ones have endured. They would be able to figure out what happened, hopefully keep it from happening, any of these difficult abusive situations. So this bill is on the right track, and we do believe it should be presented again, and we specifically want to make sure that concerns over privacy are addressed in a way that makes sense.
Thank you. Representative Panacity, do you want to speak to your second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some committee meeting definitely showed that there is a need. There are people that would love to see this. It was good to hear from Ms. Akins about rules have already established certain requirements or certain procedures for video surveillance. It still needs to be looked at. There are still cost issues, privacy issues that need to be addressed. And I think the best way to do that is move forward with the legislation.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. The
Hang on a
motion,
second. Can you hear me?
yes,
Okay, I can't raise my hand quickly enough. It's Representative Schmidt.
Representative,
I just want the record to reflect in terms of the actual executive session that we are aware of concerns with regard to the potential for, harm to the funding stream as referenced by Ms. Aiken, and so I want that to be on the record for the executive session and our action at this time. But I will support the motion.
thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll try this again. The motion is recommend for future legislation made by Representative Schultz, seconded by Representative Panacity. And when ready, Representative Sitek, you can call roll.
Representative Schuett,
Yes.
Representative Schmidt,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Desjardins,
Yes.
Representative Fellows,
Yes.
Representative Fox,
Yes.
Representative Grota,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative McGuire.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Panacity,
Yes.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Yakubovich,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
and the chair.
Chair votes yes.
The usual suspects, 16-0.
A vote of 16-0, the motion for future legislation is adopted. And next one up we'll take is 1528, House Bill 1528.
Chair,
The chair recognizes Representative Schuett for a motion.
thank you. In accordance with my prime sponsor's recommendation, I will move not recommended for future legislation.
Representative
Schmidt
Schuett,
seconds.
not recommended for future legislation, seconded by Representative Schmidt, I think I heard.
Correct.
And Representative Schuett, you can speak to your motion.
I think pretty much everything that anybody wanted to say has been said on this bill. I will try and make the statement as clear as possible that we definitely want to see the department go forward with this in the best possible means. And I will state that if we don't see that happening in 2021, that we will put forward legislation for 2022.
Thank you. Representative Schmidt, do you want to speak to your second?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I think Representative Waltz's remark that this is going to be a long process to do the study that has already been initiated, and we will have a chance to monitor that and see whether it's getting the kind of results that would justify not proceeding with additional legislation. And if it is not proceeding in that fashion, that we will have a chance in the second term, in the second year of the term of the session to introduce such legislation. So I think we're good to go on that.
Further discussion? Seeing none. The motion on House Bill 1528 is to not recommend for future legislation, made by Representative Schuett, seconded by Representative Schmidt. And when ready, Representative Sitek, you can call roll.
Okay, Representative Schuett,
Yes.
Representative Schmidt,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Desjardins,
Yes.
Representative Fellows,
Yes.
Representative Fox,
Yes.
Representative Grota,
Oui.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative McGuire,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Panacity,
Yes.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Yakubovich,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
and the chair,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
A vote of 16-0, the motion passes. And the last bill we'll take up today is House Bill 1536, relative to pharmacists in charge, the inspections, regulations of prescription drugs by pharmacy board and disciplinary actions by the pharmacy board. And I will recognize Representative Merchant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the three fundamental issues that this bill addresses are important and should be dealt with, at least discussed. But it does also require additional changes and modifications to the bill itself. So the
Before you go any
concept,
further, can I get a second, Representative Merchant, on your
Thank you.
motion?
Representative Schmidt seconds.
Seconded by Representative Schmidt. Okay, Representative Merchant, you can speak to your motion.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the concepts of the bill, the premise of the issues raised by the bill to be addressed by the bill are valid and important. However, the language in the bill that was proposed is in need of revisions. And I believe future legislation will be able to resolve the issues, and it's a possibility for the stakeholders through future discussion and also input from other factors to weigh in on the future legislation to, at that point in time, make the bill the work way it should, what it's intended to do.
Thank you. Representative Schmidt, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill will be coming back to us. I think we can be fairly confident that that's the case. And we will be able to see, and we will have plenty of input because we know that some of the other professions are concerned about pharmacy board overreach and so forth and so on, as am I. But that this is a profession which is also evolving, and this concept of infusion and so forth is a procedure that is becoming ever more commonly applied and practiced. I myself had one after having had a bout in the hospital with a urinary tract infection and some sepsis. So I know that this infusion thing is extremely significant in today's medical care. And this is something that also needs to be, all these evolutions need to be monitored so that we get the legislation right, and we will have a good chance of having it come to a subcommittee as well in the next term. So I think this is a good course of action.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 1536? Seeing none. The motion is to recommend for future legislation made by Representative Merchant, seconded by Representative Schmidt. And when ready, Representative Sitek, you can call roll.
Representative Schuett,
Yes.
Representative Schmidt,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Desjardins,
Yes.
Representative Fellows,
Yes.
Representative Fox,
Yes.
Representative Grote,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative McGuire.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Panacity,
Yes.
Representative
Pearson.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Yakubovich,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
and the chair.
The chair votes yes.
16-0.
The vote of 16-0, the motion passes. That's the extent of our work today. I want to thank everyone. I want to especially thank the staff for doing this for us and getting this done. Also want to, I'm hoping we'll see her before she leaves town, but Representative Desjardins is not running again. We'll miss you.
We'll see you Thursday. No, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
See you tomorrow.
Anyone else in the
Yes.
committee that's not running or won't be back next year?
Reed.
Represent Panacity, you as well, that's right.
You're not
I
running?
I am not back next year, and I did want to take this opportunity to say to everybody on the committee, I've done three different committees, and I have to put this at the top of the list. I think all the participants were great, worked together. I think the chairman did a wonderful job, and I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, can I just make the committee aware of something?
Sure.
Just wanted to let you all know, person who has appeared before our committee before, I think you're probably mostly all familiar with the lobbyist Beth Sargent. Before our committee, she has primarily represented independent pharmacists, and her husband passed away on September 7th.
Oh my gosh.
At a very young age, 59. I just wanted to make you all aware of that.
That is tragic. I know Beth extremely well. I'm so sorry to hear that. I had not been aware.
All right. The only other thing I want to bring forward is to let everybody know some point, probably the first half of October, I will send something out. Pam, I'd like to probably try and do a committee meeting with the new executive director of OLPC. I've received an email. I know Representative Schmitz received an email on some of the changes she would like to see going forward. I think it would be good for the committee to sit down and hear her plans going forward as an insight. And so that's my plan. I hope you can all attend, and that way we can welcome her and hear what she has in store for her new position.
What about an end of the year get together, Jeff?
We could do that as well.
I mean, we can do it with masks and social distancing.
I was going to say, we're under the 50 requirement, right? So
yeah, we are.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm way over 50.
Could they be combined in one day?
What?
You mean the October meeting and the get together?
Yes.
I can say I will be meeting remotely, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective.
Well, it's unfortunate, of course.
all right, it will be something that we will discuss further, and we'll let you know where we're going from there.
See you all Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Reed.
Okay, tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can go to UNH on Thursday. We'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Representative Schmidt, do you want to say
Wait a
something?
minute. Hold on.
What is
Thank
this like?
Your kind words,
I
Reed.
hope you'll all be very successful
Thanks,
in the
Diane.
election on November 4th.
Well, yeah. Reed and Kathy, it's been a pleasure working with both of you. I've enjoyed it. It's to your point, Rita. It's first time on a committee, but I think the committee worked very well together.
Thank you. I'm going to miss the committee work.
Oh, we
Yeah,
hope
if you
you'll
don't did
reconsider. That's I hope you didn't have a golf date for tomorrow.
Oh, I did. I'm gonna have to cancel that one.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, I want to thank you, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Maybe it's a good thing I'm not coming back next week. See you later.